Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ready for Rome. This is our Rome orientation webinar with Italia Pass, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Shelley Ruel, and I'm the community manager at Italia Pass. And I'm joined by my colleague, Loriane Filon, who is our Italia Pass Primo Italy Experience Specialist, which means that she helps our Italia Pass Primo members with booking itineraries, getting their discounts, helping them with their benefits as part of the Italia Pass Primo program, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, alongside our information that we're going to share with you about traveling here to Rome. So I live in Rome. I've lived in Rome since 2001, and I will be sharing some information about my experiences here to help you have a great time here in Rome. As we get started, I wanted to first give a little bit of information about what is Italia Pass. I'm assuming that most of you are here in this webinar because you purchased tickets with Italia Rail. So Italia Rail is part of a family of brands known as the Italia brands. And in 1987, Italia Rail was founded, and there are other brands, a tours brand, a rental car brand, and hotels. And these brands have worked with millions of tourists who have traveled to Italy. And our CEO wanted to help his customers to have their best trip to Italy ever. So that's how Italia Pass came to be. And Italia Pass has two types of membership. So the first type is a free membership, which is the online community that I manage. And then there's also a benefits program called Primo, and it costs $99. And the benefits that come with the Primo membership total up to $500 in value. And we'll be talking a little bit about those as we go through today's presentation. So speaking of today's presentation, here's what we're going to cover. We're first going to talk about arriving into Fiumicino Airport, which is where most of you are probably going to reach Rome, and then how you get into the city from the airport. And then we're going to tell you about the Italia Pass Lounge at Rome's Termini Station. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to get around with public transport here in Rome. And then also about restaurants, eating out, how the menus look and work, and some local customs around eating out. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can get a complimentary entry into the Colosseum and a $100 automatic refund for a tour in Rome or the Vatican. I'm going to give you a few tips about how to avoid some common tourist traps, and then some more local tips about things that I would suggest you try that maybe not all tourists get a chance to do. And then at the very end, this will all take about a half an hour, our presentation. And after our presentation, we're going to open it up for 15 minutes of a live Q&A. And the way that will work is you'll see on the bottom of your screen an icon, a Q&A icon, and it'll be like a chat format. So if you click on the Q&A, you enter your question, type your question in, then Loriane and I will answer those questions live. And so I'm going to pass it over to Loriane right now to get started and talking about how to get into the city from the airport.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. So a little bit of information on your arrival at FCO Airport. You have a few options to get to the center of Rome. As you see on the slide, they're all going to be indicated in the terminal. The first option is reaching Roma Termini, which is the main station in Rome, by train. There are two types of trains that you can take from FCO Airport. The first one is the Leonardo Express, which is a direct train to Termini Station, and it costs $16 on Italia Rail. And the second one is a more local train that you'll get that will get you to the smaller stations in Rome. Depending on where your accommodations are, you might want to get to Trastevere or Ostiense, and that train costs $10 on Italia Rail. Both trains are considered to be regional trains, and you do have to check in before boarding those trains. All of those instructions on how to check in and everything else is sent to you by email. The email that you'll receive is the one with the electronic train tickets when you book on Italia Rail. And generally, we do get questions about booking ahead of time. And that's something that I do recommend that you do. If you know when you're going to be landing, allow for about a 2-hour buffer before you book your time train ticket out of FCO Airport to the center of Rome. But I do recommend that you book them ahead of time just in case, so that you don't get stuck at the airport or have to wait a longer time than you would want to if you don't have your tickets. There are also taxis that you can take outside the terminal. They have a fixed rate of 55 euros. There's also other options like the shuttle bus, and we can also book a private transfer for you. So that's a private car, and a driver will be waiting for you directly after customs and taking you straight to your accommodation. So that's also a great option if you're traveling with a big group, or you want to be more comfortable on your travel to Rome. And that could be booked either through the Italia Tours website or through your dedicated Italy experience specialist, like myself or my colleague Sophia, if you're a Primo member with us. And we get a lot of questions about car rentals. So whether or not you should be booking a car on your trip to Italy, a good rule of thumb is to, if you're going to be traveling between the major cities, I recommend traveling by train, because it's much easier and there's a lot of traffic rules within the Italian cities to operate a car, so you might not want to deal with that. But if you're going to be exploring some of the more remote areas in Italy, then you most probably will want to book a car, and you can do so on italiadrive.com. And once you've booked with us, you can let us know and we'll apply a $10 discount if you're a Primo member with us, which is a good perk. Another great perk of being a member is the access to the Italia Pass Lounge. It's located in the Roma Termini train station, so not the FCO airport, but the train station in Rome. And if you have some free time before or after boarding a train or waiting for your hotel check-in time, you can relax at the lounge. We offer free Wi-Fi, espresso refreshments, and free luggage storage for your carry-on and your larger suitcases during opening hours. The only thing to really note is once you book your visit at the lounge, which you have to do ahead of time, to really read the instructions to access the lounge very carefully. We also have a quick video on our website showing you how to get to the lounge from within Roma Termini. So that's something to look out for. And now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport within the city.
Okay, great. Thank you. So public transport in Rome is called ATAC. That's the name of the company. And there's three basic methods of public transport available. There's the above ground buses. There's a metro. It's called metro. That's the subway. Metro is short for metropolitana. So that's the underground. Rome's underground system is very basic and simple because there's only two lines. There's the A line and the B line, and they only intersect at one point. And that one point is Rome Termini Station, which is the main central train station. So if you need to switch from A to B, that's where you're going to cross onto the other line. And then there are also a couple of trams, which are, less used because there's only like two in the city. So mainly if you're going to take public transport as a visitor, you're probably going to take either a bus and or the underground. Now, the tickets are relatively inexpensive when compared to other large European cities because they only cost €1.50. And the way that they work is they work on a time system. So they're good for 100 minutes. So you don't have to worry about zones like you do in other large European cities or even like New York City, where you're going to be having to pay different amounts when you travel to different parts of the city. Your ticket is good for 100 minutes from the time that you first board whatever public transport you board until the 100 minutes is up. Now, there's one exception to the 100-minute rule, and that is you only get one subway ride on one ticket. So what that means is you have 100 minutes and you can enter the subway at any time within that 100-minute span. And in fact, your 100 minutes might start if your first ride is on the subway. But once you've exited the subway station, you can no longer take another subway ride on that same ticket. However, if you still have 100 minutes left from the time that you took your first public transport, you can still use that ticket on buses or trams. So one metro ride, 100 minutes for everything else. And in terms of the metro and the subway system, something that's very convenient for ticketing is there's a tap and go system at the turnstiles. So you don't even have to purchase a paper ticket to ride the underground if you have a contactless payment method. So if you have like a contactless chip, debit or credit card, or even a contactless payment on your smartphone, You can tap the turns. There's a little screen on the turnstile, and that will let you enter into the underground. The one thing there, though, is that it has to be one payment method for each rider because your payment method counts as your ticket. So what I mean by that is you can't use the same credit or debit card for 2 or more people. Each rider has to have their own payment method. The reason for that is because your payment method then becomes your proof of ticket. That won't be an issue so much on the metro because there aren't inspectors since you have to pass through the turnstiles to board. However, on our buses here, you board the bus and no one checks you. It's not like in other cities where you have to get on where the driver is and like check in with the driver or even buy a ticket from the driver. You can't purchase tickets on the buses and no one is going to check you. The only time you would ever get your ticket checked is if an inspector randomly boards the bus, which can happen, especially on some of the more popular routes. And if that were to happen, you would just show the payment method that you used to purchase your ticket if you did the tap and go system. Now, if you don't do the tap and go, you're going to need a ticket. And tickets are called, I put in quotes here, biglietto, because that's what they're called. You can buy tickets at ticket machines, which you're going to find in the underground stations. Or if you need to get a ticket for the bus, you can purchase those at the tobacconists, which are called tabaqueria. And those are easy to find because you're going to see a big T over the door. Or at newsstands. There's newsstands throughout Rome, and you can just go up and pay for your ticket at the newsstand. And you'll get a paper ticket. And how that works is when you get on the bus, there's going to be yellow boxes on poles, and you're going to stick your ticket inside the box. It's going to pull it in, then it's going to spit it back out. What it's doing is validating it, and it's marking the time that you put it in. And so from that moment, then that's how long you have those 100 minutes. You only have to do that once. Once it's validated, you just put it in your wallet or whatever and keep it with you. You don't have to validate it every single time. And you don't have to check out when you get off the bus. Some European cities have check in, check out. You just do that one validation and you're good to go. One bus I did want to highlight as a visitor to Rome is bus route number 64. Now, bus 64 is super convenient for visitors because it has the depot for that route. It goes from Termini Station, which is, as we said, the main train station, all the way across the historic center over to the Vatican. So with that route, you're going to be able to hit most of your major tourist attractions. That being the case, however, it's also a popular route that can sometimes be targeted by pickpockets because they know that that bus is generally crowded, especially in high season. You're going to find that it's probably a little bit less now that we're moving into low season. And being that it's crowded with tourists, there's a lot of tourists who are distracted, who aren't really aware of their belongings, aware of their surroundings. Those are the people the pickpockets are going to target. So I don't want this to worry you at all. I've been here for over 20 years and knock on wood, I've never been pickpocketed. And the reason for that is because I'm always very aware of my belongings. So when I have my purse, I wear it across like a crossbody bag. I suggest with men, if you have a wallet, don't put it in your back pocket, maybe put it in your front pocket. You just want to make sure that you look like you know where you're going, what you're doing. Don't look distracted. Don't be looking. It's hard, I know, if you're past, especially like this photo, if you're driving by the Colosseum on the bus, but at least have your belongings secure and maybe keep your hand close to anything so that a pickpocket can't. They use this tactic where they bump people, and if you're in a crowd, you won't feel it. You're being jostled around. So just to make you aware, Rome is a very safe city. Petty crime is a problem only in these really crowded tourist areas. So apart from bus 64, I would also suggest that you keep an eye on your belongings, as I would give advice to anybody in any big city at crowded areas. So in front of Trevi Fountain, maybe at the Spanish Steps, any of these places where tourists congregate, and especially in kind of are crowded in where people might be bumping around, and they can easily just kind of, they're very good at what they do, unfortunately, just kind of grab your wallet or whatever out of your bag. All right, so the next slide here is a fun one because I get to tell you all about restaurants and menus and eating out, which I think is going to be one of your really fun parts of experiencing Rome, because who doesn't want to explore all the delicious Italian and Roman food? So a couple of points that people often ask, so I bring these up about restaurant customs. We do tend to eat a little bit later than, let's say, people in North America like US or Canada, where many of our customers come from. We tend to start eating lunch around 1:30 and dinner around 8 or 8:30. So it might be a little bit later than you're used to. Now, does that mean restaurants are all closed and you can't get a meal outside of these times? No. What it does mean though, if you're going to be going to where locals eat and you're trying to get in to eat dinner at like 5:30 or 6, chances are they're not going to be ready. Their kitchen's not open yet. So just keep that in mind. The reason I put check here as a bullet point, and I wrote il conto because that's the way that you say check in Italian. The reason is because there's a custom here that people have mentioned to me that's a little bit different than back in the United States or say Canada, where oftentimes if you're at a restaurant, your server, as a courtesy, when they bring the food, they'll also oftentimes bring the check right away and say, okay, I'll just take this whenever you're ready, because it's a courtesy so that when you're ready, your check is ready to go and you can go. It's really the opposite here in Italy, and it's a cultural thing because here going out to eat is kind of a really cherished time to spend with family and friends. So the wait staff never wants you to feel like you're being rushed out. So they won't bring your check without you asking. And so sometimes people have said, well, why are they like not bringing my check and it's taking forever or whatever? But that's because they're trying to really be respectful of the fact that once you're at that table is yours for as long as you want it. And they don't want you to feel rushed. So that being said, just be aware if you're waiting for your check and it's not coming, it's probably because they don't want to disturb you and you just need to ask for it. Tipping is a question that comes up a lot. You do not need to tip here at the restaurants. I know that might feel a little bit uncomfortable or different, especially if you come from like where I do in the United States, where now 20% tip, the wait staff works for tips. Here, wait staff earns a regular salary. They don't work for tips. So you do not need to leave a tip. If you feel like you want to leave a little courtesy tip, sometimes like when I'm out with my friends, maybe we'll leave like €1 per person if we really like the service, but don't feel obligated to do so. And that same goes, people ask me about taxis as well. It's the same thing with taxis. You are not required to tip. It's not expected. You can pay for taxis nowadays with card payments. If you're paying with cash, it's a courtesy to round up to the next euro, just so that the taxi driver doesn't have to make complicated small change, but you're not expected to leave a tip in taxis either. In terms of the menus, the way Italian menus work is that you're going to see in restaurants, which is a ristorante, they have an antipasto, primo, and secondo. So you have antipasto as appetizers. Primo is like your pasta dishes and rice, so risotto. And the secondo are the meat dishes, so chicken, fish, beef. And you don't have to order every single course. You can pick and choose. That's totally up to you. Don't feel obligated that you have to order every section of the menu, something. You can mix and match. That's not a problem. The reason I've broken out ristorante and pizzeria is because in a restaurant, you may or may not find pizza on the menu. So if you want pizza, then make sure you're looking for a pizzeria. A pizzeria is a sit-down pizza restaurant, whereas a pizza al taglio is like a street food pizza shop. You're going to see those as you're walking around. So in a pizza al taglio, as you're walking around the city, you're going to see pizza underneath a glass case. And the way that pizza works is you're going to walk in, find the type of pizza that you want. There's going to be different varieties. And then the person behind the counter will indicate kind of with their hands, how much do you want? And so you tell them how much you want, then they're going to cut it to measure depending on how much you want. They're going to weigh it, and it's sold by weight. So it's not like you go in and say, I want one piece. You have to show them how much you want. Generally, it runs between, I'd say, 5 to 10 euros, depending on what kind of pizza you're getting and how much you're getting. So that's pizza al taglio. Al taglio means cut. It means cut, literally it means cut pizza, because they will cut it to measure for however much you want. Now, in a pizzeria, Roman style pizza comes as an individual pizza. You're going to get an entire pizza to yourself, but don't panic, because Roman pizza is a very thin crust and it's generally cooked in a wood-fired oven. It's very delicious. It's going to come to you fully like a full pizza, and you're going to have to cut it. They generally don't cut it. And the reason I put toppings on the bullet points here is because in the United States, for example, we order a pizza and we all share at the table, and everyone like kind of puts the toppings that they want on it. Here in Rome, the toppings are kind of pre-configured. So there's different types of pizza. They each have a name, And you're going to look at the menu and decide the kind of topping combination that you like that's on the menu and order that pizza. You don't get to kind of make your own pizza. So like a very common cheese pizza is called margherita. And so these names are common types of pizza. The toppings are preformed basically. And the last bullet point there, it says fritti, which literally means fried. So fried appetizers are very common in pizza restaurants. And it says supli. Supli is that rice ball you see in the photo. This is a Roman specialty. I recommend you try it when you come here. You can get it in a sit-down pizza restaurant, but you can also get it in a pizza al taglio, like as street food. It's like €1. It's a great snack if you're walking around exploring the city. So what it is that they take arborio rice and they put a ragu, like a tomato meat sauce, and they mix that with the rice. And then they make like a little, almost like a meatball out of it. And they put mozzarella in the middle. And then they bread it and then they deep fry it. So how you see there is the mozzarella is all melty in the middle. It's a fried rice ball. It's supli and it's only really available in Rome. So I suggest you try that when you come. Last but not least, I hope that you try our amazing coffee here in Rome. If you want to go to get a coffee, the coffee bars are called Il Bar. And the way it works is you go up to the cash register and you pay first for whatever you want. So you tell the cashier, I want a cappuccino, I want an espresso, whatever, and then you pay. And they're going to give you a receipt. Then you take that receipt and you walk over to the glass counter, to the coffee bar itself. And then you're going to show or put the receipt down on the counter. And then you're going to have to tell the barista what you want. And in some of the crowded ones, some of these crowded coffee bars, you got to have sharp elbows, work your way to the front. Don't be shy. So you pay first, then you order. One thing I want to tell people about is that when you say cafe, you might think, okay, cafe means coffee. Yes, it does. But to an Italian, coffee means espresso. So when you say un caffè at the coffee bar, they know that's espresso. So if you're thinking, I want a coffee, and it's not going to be a mug of American coffee, obviously, that would be an Americano, which we also have in the United States, like at Starbucks. So a cafe is an espresso. We drink cappuccino for breakfast. We don't drink cappuccino after dinner. Sometimes you might be offered a cappuccino if you're at a more touristy restaurant. Most local restaurants don't even really have milk to make the cappuccino for you after dinner. They will offer you an espresso after dinner. And in terms of the best places to drink Italian espresso here in Rome, at the end of this webinar, I'm going to show you or tell you where to go. And I'm also going to send you a link. We have a resource list, and I've listed the 2 most famous, kind of most popular places to get an espresso that you can try. All right, so next one, I'm going to pass it back to Lorian to talk to you about how to get into the Colosseum for free.
Great, thank you. So now for all the exciting sites and the activities that you're going to be doing in Rome, our Primo members get 1 free Skip the Line Colosseum ticket of a $22 value. And that gives you access to the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, and Palatine Hill. And we also have great tours of the Vatican, tours of the Colosseum as well, because the ticket only gets you entrance. But if you book a tour with us, the ticket is included, and we can also include that free ticket in your purchase of a tour and do it as a discount. As well as walking tours of the rest of Rome. That includes Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, Pantheon, etc. I recommend also taking a look at our Rome Tour Pass if you're spending at least 2 full days in Rome, which includes 3 of our best tours of Rome and gives you a great overview of the city. And if you choose one of the great tours that we have on the website, even if it's not in Rome, you do get $100 credit to spend on your first tour booking when you're a member with us, and 10% off with any subsequent tours that you'd be booking with us. And these tours are bookable on italiatours.com, or you can email us if you have any questions and we can help you book these. We also get frequent questions about the dress code. And as a general rule, if you're going to be visiting the Vatican or the main basilicas and duomos, you need to wear clothes that'll cover your shoulders and your knees. That's especially true for the Vatican. And you also don't want to be bringing large backpacks or large bags in general, strollers, etc. if you're going to the Vatican specifically or the Colosseum. So generally the best is to have a crossbody bag or something smaller where you can have a water and your own personal belongings without it being too inconvenient and not being able to be let into these places. And you do need to book in advance, especially for the Vatican. They do book up very, very fast, the tours and tickets, everything. So you can reach out to us as soon as you can, and we'll help you out with that. Another great thing is that we currently have a special offer that gives you free access to a special Vatican City edition of the magazine Bellissimo, which is a part of Italy magazine. And you'll get insider tips into visiting great landmarks within the Vatican, such as the St. Peter's Basilica, the Sistine Chapel, and the museum ahead of the Jubilee 2025, which you might have heard of. And this issue is great because you're going to be learning a lot if you're a first-time visitor, or if you're going back to Rome and you're going to revisit the Vatican, you'll get a lot of insider tips, which is a great way to do that. And to get access, all you need to do is fill out a brief survey, and all that information can be found in the resources that Shelley will be sharing in the community.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. So yeah, don't worry if we're going fast and you're not catching all of this, because you are going to get a list of resources. I'm going to email all of this to you. I'm going to send you a link to resources. You're going to get a link to this webinar, the recording, and you're also going to get a link to the Q&A that we're going to do at the end. So now I'm going to talk to you about a few tourist traps that are pretty common so that you can avoid them and be like a local. So in terms of restaurants, a sure tip off to a restaurant that's geared towards tourists is if the menu has pictures on it, or if outside of the restaurant, there's a person who's trying to like kind of, I call them promoters, somebody who's trying to get you to come in, because obviously a local Roman restaurant doesn't need to like try to get people to come in. People are just going to know that it's a good restaurant and they're going to go there. These are the types of restaurants that you're going to find in the heavily trafficked tourist areas, like down by the Pantheon, down by the Colosseum, Spanish Steps, etc. They're easy to avoid because there are plenty of regular Roman restaurants that you can eat at that aren't geared towards tourists. Now, are you going to have a terrible meal if you go to one of these restaurants? No, most Italian food is decent no matter where you go. Is it going to be super authentic and a meal that you're like, oh, I'm so glad I came to Rome to eat this meal? Yeah, probably not. So that being the case, if you have a choice, avoid these ones. I'm going to have a couple of restaurant recommendations in the resource list as well. Now you see this photo here in the middle. I took this photo near the Trastevere neighborhood several years ago. It was just a gladiator here with his Samsonite suitcase rolling home. And I thought it was so funny. So these guys, they dress up like gladiators and they go stand in front of the Colosseum and they take pictures with tourists. And so the reason I call it a tourist trap is because sometimes they come across like it's for free, and it's not for free. This is how they're making money. And the reason it can be a quote trap is because if you don't agree on the price before you take a photo with them, who knows what price they might try to charge you after the fact. And then it just could be an awkward or uncomfortable situation if it's more than you wanted to pay, or if you didn't know that you actually have to pay. So if you do want to do that, then I recommend you just agree on the price before you go ahead and take that photo. Another thing that tourists are kind of targeted with are these rose sellers. You see in this other photo, this gentleman with this giant bunch of roses, especially in the evenings, especially in like neighborhoods like Trastevere that have lots of restaurants, lots of nightlife. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll come up and they'll give it to you and say, here, it's a gift. Well, of course it's not a gift, but it's that same tactic of once it's in your hand, they're counting on you maybe feeling obligated to pay for it. And who knows how much they're going to ask. I don't know how much they charge. I'm imagining it's like €5 or something, but if you don't want that rose, you might feel uncomfortable if they approach you and they give it to you. And then, so the easiest thing to do is just walk on by if you don't want it. But just to make you aware that those people are around. And if that's something that you don't want to have, then just walk right on by. Don't feel rude. They have plenty of other tourists who will take their rose. Gelato. I hope you're going to love and enjoy our delicious gelato here in Rome, but I want you to avoid gelato that's more what they would call commerciale, kind of like more mass marketed gelato. The really authentic gelato will never look like what you see in this photo. You're gonna see a lot of this downtown in the tourist areas. This gelato that looks so spectacular, it's really puffed up, you know, this, oh wow, look at that, it's amazing. But what it really means is they just whipped a lot of air into it and to make it look kind of showy. A delicious artisanal gelato will never come that far above the tub. And in fact, some gelato shops you're going to find, I hope you find these ones, because some gelato shops have not ice cream, the gelato is actually in a metal tub with a lid. And so you won't even see the gelato. That's also a very good sign of an authentic gelato shop. They'll just have a list of the flavors. So overflowing tubs you want to avoid. And then of course, overly bright colors is a sure sign that it's artificially flavored. Natural gelato is going to have natural looking colors, nothing neon. Next, here are a couple of my local tips. You can be extra local when you come here. So the first one is this fountain that you see in the photo in the top center. We have these fountains all over the city. There's thousands of them. They're called nasoni, which means big noses, and that's because of the way the spigot is. These fountains, as you see in the photo, the water just runs continuously all day long. It comes from a deep underground spring. It comes out really cold. And you can refill your water bottles at these fountains. So you don't have to buy plastic bottles. You don't have to worry about like purchasing a lot of water bottles. Just refill at these fountains. And in the resources list, I'm going to provide the website or the link for an app that will actually show you where these fountains are located. So you can download that on your smartphone and know when you're going to get your next water refill, where you can find it. Oh, and if you want to be super local, what you can do is if you don't have a bottle, some locals will like plug the bottom of the spigot because it's running down continuously. You plug it with your thumb. There's a little tiny hole in the top. So when you plug it with your thumb, it creates pressure and it makes a spray come out like a water fountain where you can like go down and drink out of it. Just be careful that you don't spray anybody walking by because that can sometimes happen. So that's a super local way to drink out of the water fountains. Another tip I like to tell people about is Villa Borghese. It's a giant, beautiful outdoor green park with a beautiful overlook. You can take lots of beautiful pictures there. Visitors don't always get there because they're so busy with everything else, the main sites, but Villa Borghese, especially this time of year, is a really wonderful place to visit. You can take a picnic there, just take a walk. You can rent what's called a risho. That's the bike in the photo here. They're these bikes. The one you see in the photo is for 2 people, and then even a little kid can fit in the front. They also have ones that have 2 benches, so you could get 4 adults and kids in the front. And they rent those by the hour. They're not that expensive. I think they're between maybe 15, depending on how large the bike is, between 10 and 20 euros per hour. And you can drive those all around the park. It's a lot of fun. Or there's even a lake, and you can rent rowboats and go out on the lake. So Villa Borghese, and I have a link to the terrace where you can take the pictures in the resources list. Last but not least, you may know about our tradition here of having an aperitivo. In the photo, you see that orange drink. It's known as an Aperol Spritz, you may have heard of. It's a very famous pre-dinner drink. So aperitivo is a pre-dinner tradition. It starts around 6:30. It's drinks and some snacks. This one that I show you, which I'll give you the link to this place, they have a very abundant aperitivo with lots of delicious little snacks. You can also get them at like the coffee bar in the evenings. You could ask for an aperitivo and they may just give you potato chips and peanuts, something more simple. And the Aperol Spritz has light amount of alcohol, but you can also get ones that have no alcohol in them at all. And it's kind of a nice pre-dinner tradition. So those are my tips for some extra local things to do. Next, I'm going to pass it back over to Lorian to tell you about a special event that we offer our members.
Absolutely. So this is one of our most popular benefits of the Primo membership, which is the access to our Borgia Gallery. So it's one of the only places in the city where you can actually access the original ancient Roman street level. And if you book a visit with us as a member, you'll hear about the fascinating history of the Borgia family. You'll get a great look into the Roman Renaissance, and you'll be able to have a great wine tasting and aperitivo, which Shelley just mentioned is a really great way to experience the local food culture in Rome. And this is all led by our expert sommelier. This is only accessible to our Primo members, and it's really a great experience. So if you have the option to do it, I really highly recommend it. And it'll be closed for renovations starting November 25th. So if you're traveling before then, or if you have any questions, again, you can always email us or ask your questions in the community. We'll be happy to help you.
Okay, so that wraps up our presentation. So like I said, you're going to receive an email with links to the resources, a recap of the Q&A that we're going to do right now, and you'll also get a recording of this webinar. It's either going to come out later today, or if I don't get to it because already it's going to be 7 o'clock here in Italy, you'll get it by tomorrow latest. And if you want to check the resources right away, that article is already posted on the community. Just go to the community. And you'll just look for Ready for Rome orientation on the left sidebar. It's under Italy travel planning. So you can browse those resources in the community. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Stop sharing, and here we are. So we're going to open it up to questions now, and I see that we already have a couple. So if you want to ask a question, just click the Q&A icon. And another thing about questions is we're going to devote 15 minutes to going through as many questions as we can. If we don't get to answer all of them in the 15 minutes that we have allotted, don't worry, write your question in there because it will be recorded. And then what I do after the webinar is I go through and I type out the answers to all the questions and I post those in the community. So your question will get answered even if we don't get to it live. All right, so here we go. So Chris asks, how can I confirm if I purchased Italia Pass?
Yeah, so if you're referring to the Primo membership, the Italia Pass Primo membership, which is $99, you would have purchased it separately. So you would have received an email confirming your registration as a member and giving you a member number. So if you haven't received that, you're not a member with us. I also looked into our database. If it's under your name, we don't have your name in our database, but you can send us an email. We'll check. Yeah, we'll check for you if you're not sure.
Okay, and the next question, how can I obtain the recording so my husband can view? So you'll be getting an email either today or tomorrow, depending on how fast I can get it out. And in that email, you will have a link to this recording.
Thank you for your great presentation. You're welcome. Thank you. Do you recommend buying an eSIM card when going to Italy? Yes. I think Shelly, maybe you would agree too, but usually there's one that's called Airalo that you can download on your phone. It's an app and you could buy an eSIM card. You have all of the instructions they walk you through, and then you can, you'll have a little bit of internet there without relying on Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi is pretty prevalent everywhere right now as well. So
yeah, so what I'll do is in our Q&A recap, which you're going to get a link to, I will link to the app that Lorian just mentioned. And then also just be aware that you can also get by with Wi-Fi if you have messaging apps like WhatsApp. That's not as popular in the US, but here in Italy, we use it forever. Like it's a very popular app. And you can do text messaging and video calls over Wi-Fi with that app. So that might be an alternative. Is it better to take Uber or a taxi around town? So Uber is present in Rome. It'll work on just the regular Uber smartphone app. The only real difference between Uber and a local taxi is the price. Ubers are more expensive. It's probably going to come down to where you're at in that moment and what the wait is going to be. So, and your budget. And whether to determine if you're going to take a taxi or an Uber. That's what it's going to come down to. The availability, the wait time, and the price. I am in the resources list. I've listed, and also it'll be in the Q&A recap. I will give you a link to an app for taxis, so you don't have to worry about the language barrier trying to call for a taxi. And Uber is just the regular Uber app. And then just one point about taxis that people have asked in the past. Do you hail a taxi? No. Here in Rome, we don't hail cabs. That's not how it works. So if you're trying to hail a cab and they just keep driving by, that's why. the way it works is there's taxi stands all throughout the city, and you'll be able to tell those because they have orange signs that say taxi, and they just have lines. Those are in the main like tourist areas or at the train stations. And then you can order a taxi through this app. So those are the two main ways to get a taxi.
You
Oh,
mentioned
yeah,
accessing
go
the
ahead.
community. How do I do that? I think you will receive an email from us with all of the resources. Shelly, I know you're in charge of that.
You'll get an email with all the resources, but if you want to just go to the community and look at it, you can just type into your browser
I can
community.
send it to you.
Okay, perfect. Community.italiapass.com. And that's how you get onto the community. And it's free to browse, free to join. If you want to ask a question, you do have to create an account. Okay, so that's all the question. Oh, wait, how will this, oh, you're welcome. Someone wrote, how will the strike affect travels this Friday? Is there a train strike this Friday or a local public transport strike?
If it's on Friday, it's probably very localized. We haven't heard of anything yet this Friday. There was one last Sunday that was pretty widespread. Any strike information will be given to you if you've booked tickets with us by email. So we email you all of the information that we have. Generally, if your train is canceled because of a strike, you get rerouted at the station to another train and your canceled train is refunded in full. You can reach out to us. So, but only if it is canceled. So you just have to look out for the emails that we're going to be sending you and keeping you aware of. But there's no strike that I know of this Friday.
Yeah, I'll look up, maybe I don't know if you're referring to a local public transport strike. I'm not aware of any, but I could very well not be up to date. So I'll look that up when I go through the recap, the Q&A recap. I'll do a little bit of research, and if I run across any strikes, I'll put information in response to your question. And also in the community, we always post like notifications when we are aware of a strike, whether it's a local public transport or a national train strike. You're welcome. Our pleasure. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Give it one more moment here. Now, if you think of something later, don't worry, just come on over to the community and post your question there, and I will make sure that it gets answered. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful time here in Rome, and we're here to answer your questions and help you however we can. So, buon viaggio.
Thank you. Happy travels.